The MR2, or as Spanish-speaking countries call it, the Señor Dos, is a sports car made by Toyota in the mid to late 80s. It is a teenage driver's best dream, but also possibly their worst decision, both financially and safety-wise. But why is this car so popular and so obscure at the same time? Why does it cost over $1,000 to buy one with a blown engine and rusted body? And what the heck is a snap oversteer? Together, we will look at the rich and completely factual overview of the first generation Toyota MR2. Though the MR2 is over 30 years old today, when it came out it was very futuristic and ahead of its time in many ways. The most obvious is it being a two-seater, as most people today rarely have enough friends that leave the house to need more than one passenger seat. Another is biodegradable plastic that deteriorates from just sitting there. The T-top seals are also made of a similar, eco-friendly material, and for them, the process of wear can only be slowed by constantly rubbing them with Vaseline or grease. Sadly, according to the EPA, all MR2s are estimated to be completely degraded to dust by 2025. However, a few oversights for modernization are the lack of Apple CarPlay integration, a massive media screen, and constant beeping every time the driver does anything other than drive in a straight line, all of which are part of a conspiracy designed to distract drivers and promote self-driving cars as accidents rise. Oh, and why isn't there a cup holder big enough to fit my super trendy, oversized hydro flask? Another key feature of the MR2 is of course the mid-engine layout. At first, you may think this is strange since now doing any engine work causes back pain, but luckily, being a Toyota, you will rarely ever have to do any maintenance on the car. Most owners today let their MR2s go years between oil changes. Some don't even know you have to change the oil filter. Also, as a Toyota, many parts are fairly cheap and available, except for the strips of rubber that seal the door and T-tops. Those are $300 for some reason. But this mid-engine layout is also famous for appearing on some of the world's greatest high-performance sports cars, such as the legendary, record-breaking Honda Beat. Having the engine in the back gives the car superior handling to any front engine layout. In fact, it is one of the best handling cars of all time. There is so much control that it makes driving both rewarding and very safe. Some people even go as far to say the handling is so advanced that many human minds simply cannot comprehend it. This leads them to actually run the car off the road thinking they know how to drift, despite only ever driving front-wheel drive cars their whole life. The MR2 was also built to be a tuner car, as evidenced by the small 1.6-liter inline-4. This purposely underpowered engine puts out around 110 horsepower, which motivates you to look into turbocharging or engine swaps. Plus, it gets very good gas mileage, so you can save up to afford those mods. The designers at Toyota were actually so hip with trends that they themselves included a cold air intake system built into the car. The iconic side vent takes in air from outside the car and circulates it to the engine intake. Despite this system being designed by university-graduated engineers with decades of experience building cars, many high school wannabe racers fresh off their learner permits have collectively decided that slapping a filter inside the hot engine bay is actually much smarter and effective. This is the innovation Toyota needs. But at least Toyota did manage to win in one regard, that is safety. By law, cars must come with an emergency brake. However, this presented a problem to the engineers. Putting a handbrake in this car could create some serious safety concerns for those same wannabe racers trying to do e-brake drifts in a car that is already designed with responsive and perfect handling in mind. So they did in fact put a hand parking brake in the car, but made the cables so fragile they snap and become unusable over the years as the car trickled down to younger buyers on the used market, thus saving millions of lives. With all the interesting design ideas in the MR2, how did such a unique car like this come to be? The name itself has been hotly debated. Many people believe it stands for mid-engine, rear-wheel drive two-seater. Those same people don't know how to spell, as that clearly would be MERWD2S, not MR2. The truth behind the name is actually very different. The Toyota MR2 is the successor to the MR1, an early prototype originally designed to be a futuristic spaceship-like hover car. The designers were big anime fans, particularly of mech ones. The name is a reference to the MRX Gundam robot from the popular Gundam series. Unfortunately, though the madmen at Toyota were capable of making it, they believed the general public was simply not ready for flying cars, and shifted the project to become what is now the MR2, launching in 1985. Many of the original spaceship and anime robot design elements still made their way into this model, as evidenced by the sharp angles and aggressive styling. Even the seats themselves have a certain Space Commander feel to them. One downside to the hovercar roots of the MR2 is the fact that it was not designed to be exposed to wet and salted ice roads, and thus, rust can be found in various spots on these cars today where moisture has built up. Speaking of anime earlier, the MR2 was originally going to be the main character's car in the manga and anime series Initial D, but the writer ultimately decided to use an AE86 Corolla instead. His reasoning for the change was because he himself owned a rusty 86 that he disliked and was hoping to make a ridiculous profit from selling one after the show aired. He is quoted saying, "The 86 is not actually a good car. Having it win every race was meant to be a joke. Like, how could a Corolla beat an RX-7 and GTR? I was shocked when everyone took it serious instead of being comedic." Special thanks to the 4Kids dubbing team for the translation. As time went on, however, MR2s found themselves in their share of hard times. Though very popular and considered a nice sports car when released, around the early 2000s they became cheap beaters on the used market. Today, you may think it's odd that it fell out of style, but you have to realize this was an era where the PT Cruiser was considered a cool car. What more is there to explain? As with most classic cars today, especially 80s and 90s Japanese ones, MR2s have resurged in popularity and value, but they are becoming rarer to find in decent condition as time goes on. Also based on this trend, PT Cruisers are going to skyrocket in value in the next 10 years. Cars like the MR2, though an 80s vision of the future, are something we may never see again, as buyers would rather have a car that self-drives and has a built-in knockoff iPad versus a car that is trying to kill them every turn. Sadly, people are simply too big of wusses for something like this to exist nowadays. Though some argue the risk of impaling pedestrians is worth keeping pop-up headlights alive, mothers of the fragile youth have disagreed. And let's be real, when has a car enthusiast ever had a new law go their way? And as time goes on, there will only ever be fewer of these cars around as weebs who watched a little too much Initial D keep wrecking them. There have been numerous rumors of Toyota reviving the MR2 name. Many are excited, but knowing Toyota these days, especially with the last Supra, we can expect the MR2 will end up being a mid-engine, front-wheel drive with a hybrid electric motor from a Nissan Leaf. Oh, and with 3 back seats. So I guess a more appropriate name would be the MF5. It may sound like a stretch, but if Ford can ruin the Mustang Mach name, so can Toyota with the MR2. Whatever the future holds for this beloved car, it is dimmer than the dash lights that constantly go out with each bump. The world does not deserve a car like this. Please stop ruining them. Dang it! Thanks for watching, and thanks to my patrons. From your generous donations, I was able to get a Crunchwrap Supreme, 3 Doritos Locos Tacos, nacho fries, and a Sprite. If you want to watch literal hours of me working on my MR2, check out my project series on my car. I'm hoping to turn it into a fully restored icon by the time it's done, but as you can see, I got a long way to go. Anyways, see y'all next time.